At UFC 297, Sean Strickland lost his belt by razor-thin split decision. Weeks later, he appeared to take out some of his anger on the social influencing punching bag Sneeko. This must have been therapeutic for Sean, as we know his take on social influencers.
You guys don't understand. These people at these slap fights, they're not people, man. They're influencers. They have this weird God complex. And it's just like when I'm around them, I just want to hurt them all and to remind them you are just a human being. Shut the up.
I don't know anything about Sneeko. Maybe he's great. Like if he's going into the Performance Institute looking for viral content, at least he had the decency to go through hell to get it. But the clips reached one man who didn't see it that way.
A YouTuber turned fighter.
But it's a typical story of the UFC guys who call me out and then go quiet. I've got DMs. I'll put the DMs up on the screen. I said, I'll send you the PJ. Let me know where we could spar for $1 million.
This put Strickland in an uncomfortable spot because he's in the UFC, so he ultimately had to decline while saving face and sounding tough.
So Jake Paul offered me $1 million, knowing that it is impossible for me to do that. And I actually talked to Hunter. And Hunter explained to me that he sells no fights. You can get in your fancy plane, you can fly your ass to Vegas, and we could have a little powwow. I'll do it for free. I don't need a check. I don't need to live stream it.
Sean can say that, but he knows the people who fight Jake get paid. Some of them have got the biggest paydays of their lives. He gave a more realistic appraisal of the situation on Twitter, where we began to see signs of dissatisfaction with the UFC. UFC isn't the NFL or the NBA. It's absolutely cutthroat. If I fought Jake Paul, 1, I'd murder him, but 2, we would make millions. And so that $1 million was just kind of left hanging out there, just beyond Sean's reach. I don't know what he made for the Drakish fight, certainly over $1 million, and now here was Jake's offer, which obviously puts the idea of a full Jake Paul fight into his head. That'd be worth millions. These are the opportunities rolling around his head, so it must have come as a disappointing shock when his next fight offer rolled in from the UFC and completely underwhelmed him. On the 9th of April, Paulo Costa revealed that Strickland had turned down a fight.
Unfortunately, I don't know what happened. Strickland say no. He doesn't want to fight me.
Strickland refused?
Strickland refused to fight me, unfortunately. That's what the UFC told me, you know?
Strickland actually confirmed that, but asked his followers to guess how much he'd been offered for the fight. One fan guessed $200K to show, $200 to win, and $10K fight week incentive. Sean said close, but less. Now, it's difficult to believe he was offered less than $200,000 to show, but I just don't think he would lie about it. This guy was just champion, lost a razor-close split decision. He thinks he deserves an immediate rematch. There's every argument in the world for that, and instead, they want to pay him peanuts to fight a fucking gorilla. He must have thought he was on power drivel. It was such a slap in the face. And what's this $10K fight week incentive? I forgot about that whole thing. When the UFC signed a Reebok deal, that basically killed a huge revenue stream for fighters who were previously able to sell advertising on their shorts. So to compensate them, the UFC basically decided to toss them some scraps. This is tiered by the number of fights they've had. Fighters like Strickland with 21 or more UFC fights get $21,000. Wow, $21,000. That's when you know you've hit the big time. ESPN clarified that policy bundles together the outfitting policy, promotional duties, and the code of conduct for a per-fight bonus in addition to a fighter's purse. Promotional duties. So for media obligations, they're going to toss Sean an extra $20,000. Now I'll come back to this because this is kind of the crux of the whole thing here. And it's why I think Sean's case is kind of unique.
Sean, are you happy? Are you happy with the way everything's played out? Because right now you seem a little pissed off.
I'm not pissed off, dude. I'm at work right now, you guys. You think I wanted to do media day? I have to do media day.
Anyway, they must have sweetened the deal to some degree. Enough to make him fight Paulo Costa, but not enough to make him happy.
The UFC doesn't do the right things. If you go look at, what these guys that run the UFC, what they're making to what guys get paid, is fucking shit, dude. All these fucking corporations, fucking leeches, dude.
There was quite a lot of negativity there. Leeches. This guy shoots from the hip. Despite any reservations or unhappiness, Strickland ultimately got his hand raised.
Good fight, good win. A little bit.
Good fight. I don't know about good, but I won.
Okay.
A few weeks later, the subject of money was again on Strickland's mind. He had previously taken some shots at bare knuckle.
I mean, they're like bare knuckle. You want to talk about fucking crooks, dude? They're paying their guys shit.
Eddie Alvarez responded with a great soundbite.
Called it like a shit promotion and that they pay like shit and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I mean, he probably does well in UFC, but like, I make more than Sean Strickland. I fight bare knuckle.
Yeah, he's complained about his pay too.
The big takeaway here was that Eddie matter-of-factly stated he was getting paid more at BKFC than Strickland was making in the UFC.
They pay. Like, they pay more than you're getting paid, and you're like this famous, well-known, he's a guy, you know, he's like a UFC character.
Eddie Alvarez, a 40-year-old former lightweight who hasn't been a contender since 2017, doesn't have a massive rabid fan base, and is fighting for a comparatively tiny promotion. That guy is making more money than Sean Strickland, one controversial decision removed from the belt. That is an indictment. This was another financial slap in the face to further feed Strickland's dissatisfaction. But then the king of violence himself, Mike Perry, rubbed salt in the wound.
Sean Strickland, he's fighting for the UFC for pesos, and I'm getting paid over here. And he's always posting videos on Instagram where he walks outside of his garage or his front door, and somebody's in his driveway, and he's like trying to fight him bare knuckle for free right there. So what are you talking about, Sean?
Like, these guys are out here in the BKFC acting like ballers. Mike Perry was recently talking about buying himself a yacht. Obviously hyperbole, but these guys aren't complaining about money.
We're getting paid, so.
All of this fed into Strickland's anger, and he then responded to Mike Perry with a scathing Instagram rant against the UFC, where he called the pay utter garbage and stated that the lowest level entry pay of 10 and 10 should be criminal. That is a very serious criticism of the UFC. So, Sean's unhappiness is understandable. He can see the money out there to be made. Jake offers him $1 million for a gym session. The BKFC guys are looking down on him, while he feels like he needs to put a gun to the UFC's head to get something reasonable out of them.
The UFC does not do the fucking right things. Unless you hold them at fucking, gunpoint, they ain't gonna fucking do it.
So when Whittaker demolished Ikram in his most emphatic victory in years, and the hype naturally began to build for Whittaker versus Strickland, Sean quickly shot the idea down. I beat Izzy, the world knows I beat Drakus, Whittaker lost to both. I am the #1 contender. I defended that spot easily against Costa, I'll wait. Now, I would love to see that fight. Whittaker is just elite, and they've both had a lot to say about each other's styles.
Whittaker's just this one-trick pony. Again, Whittaker could fight, but he's a one-trick fucking pony. And that's the thing, dude. When you're a one-trick pony and that one trick works a lot, it's fucking great. But when it doesn't work, time to fucking do the man dance. Time to put your hands up and bang in the pocket.
His fight style looks annoying as hell, dude. Like, mate, he looks like a kid, like when a brother and sister is like, I'm walking forward, and if you walk into it, it's your own fault. With those teep kicks, just like rapid fire, one after the other, dude.
Yeah.
Strickland might not have the most exciting style, but at this point, it has become interesting to see if he can keep freezing and kind of confusing guys. Like Costa is one thing. He did it to Adesanya too. Drakus had an answer, but got chewed up in the process. So I just love to see him get in there with a high-level cerebral problem solver like Whittaker. I just want to see what Whittaker would do with that style. So I love the fight, but I'm with Strickland with respect to his decision to wait for his shot. I think he deserves it, but I also think he's in a uniquely blind spot with respect to the UFC's pay structure. Like, there's a lot of fighters who could complain about money, but I think Strickland's situation is one of the toughest. At UFC 297, Strickland lost his belt. Close fight, could have gone either way. So it doesn't constitute a robbery. It was one of those fights where there was justifiable scorecards in either direction. But that doesn't mean there's no robbery taking place overall. The big robbery here is around the whole UFC pay structure. And I think Strickland is just about the best example of this, for a number of reasons. Strickland was a champion, beat the best middleweight of the last decade to get the belt. Beyond that though, he cultivated a considerable following. Love him or hate him, Strickland did his work both inside and outside the cage, promoting himself, building a following, and becoming a personality. Many of his fans identify with Sean, on a deep ideological level. So he's not the most popular guy in the sport, but he's one of them, and he's got a ton of die-hard fans. That whole Strickland whirlwind was ready for him to take advantage of by taking a pay-per-view slice as a champion, but that just wasn't to be. He lost the belt and now won't be getting a cut of some of the critical fights that will probably represent his prime. According to MMA Decisions, almost 60% of fans, just under 45% of media members, and the president of the company, Strickland did enough to defend his belt against Dracus. Looking at these stats, it was just the coin flippiest of split decisions. So I think Strickland is very sympathetic here. He's the only one who's not going to get a reasonable slice of the Strickland pie he created, at least in the short term. He arguably beat Dracus. If they rematch, Sean is going to do all the selling. He's bringing his horde of fans. UFC are going to make a killing. Dracus is going to get a pay-per-view slice largely boosted by Sean's antics, while Strickland gets left out in the cold. Some people might not be sympathetic towards this, especially since he has a style that is prone to controversial decisions. Sometimes it almost feels like his goal is to win by split decision. It almost feels like that's his objective, to confuse the judges.
He leaves it too close.
Yeah.
And that's why you lose some decisions you're confident in winning. That's why you can inch out win sometimes, and that's why you inch out losses sometimes, because you don't define the round enough. You don't do enough to make yourself the obvious winner of the round.
But even if you don't see Sean as sympathetic, there is a larger discussion about the pay-per-view cut for fighters. Champions get a pay-per-view cut, which is great, but outside a few notable exceptions, people who sell pay-per-views, the needle movers, who often carry the bulk of the promotional weight, don't get a cut. Now, Colby has just come out and attacked Strickland.
You know, Sean changed his life, so he's kind of hypocritical to be saying this. You know, now he lives in like a really nice, like mansion-style type house. Who is he to say this? You know, Sean's in the wrong here again, and I don't know why he's so mad about the UFC. They made him a millionaire too. So,
but one thing Colby has said in the past is that in the UFC, it's eat what you kill. In reality, it's actually not eat what you kill. Like, what is fight promotion? It's basically just sales. It's selling the fight. Right now, Sean Strickland is like an amazing salesman, doing great numbers, one of the best salesmen in the company. But he's a salesman getting 0% commission on his sales because of a razor-close decision that could have gone either way, and that the president of the company felt he should have won. Because of that decision, the UFC get to avail of all his promotional work, his social media following, his horde of die-hard fans, and the electricity he brings to Fight Week. Because of a fucking coin flip, the UFC get all of that for free. Oh, sorry, I forgot about the $20,000 Fight Week incentive. That doesn't quite cover everything Strickland is bringing to the table. So, you can see why Sean is a really interesting guy around whom to have this conversation. But ultimately, the solution isn't something to be hashed out online or in a press conference. If Sean is adding as much as he appears to be, that's something for him and his manager to take to the UFC. That's leverage to try to renegotiate his contract. In reality, though, the UFC are ruthless negotiators. Strickland has already tried renegotiating, and it doesn't sound like he enjoyed the experience. Coming to terms could be made even more difficult by the nature of relations behind the scenes. Luke Thomas recently mentioned he heard Dana flat out doesn't like Sean.
And then the third part is I have heard from people who I would say reasonably good sources that Dana White just does not like Sean Strickland. I think that for whatever reason, Dana doesn't like him or maybe sees him as a liability.
And it's very easy to imagine Dana doesn't like a guy who's characterizing their entry-level pay as criminal. I mean, the UFC don't like people going after the pay structure. So if we're talking about something like a Whittaker fight, very dangerous, high-level opponent, if they're not willing to compensate him in a way that he feels is fair for everything he's bringing to the table, he really only has one intelligent move. You know, if you don't want to pay me, well, I'm not going to give you the full promotional weight of the social media juggernaut that I've created for free. Either give me the Whittaker fight with a massive pay bump, or I'll just wait for the title shot that I absolutely deserve, that I've already earned, so I can get back to a position where I will be compensated for the promotional work that I put in. And I think that's absolutely fair. Sean Strickland may never be champion again. The top of the division is Whittaker, Strickland, Israel, and Drakers. Excellent top 4. Very tough to get to the top of that heap. That might never happen. So the time for Strickland to get compensated is now. For him to not at least be trying to play hardball in his position would be completely reckless and extremely stupid. So as much as I would love to see the Whittaker fight, for Sean's sake, I'm glad to see him take a hard line.